Today we're breaking down the easiest strength of schedules over the course of the next 5 weeks for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and even DSTs in fantasy football land. As always, it's a great day to be great. First up, breaking down the quarterback position, and the top 5 easiest strength of schedules over the course of the next 5 weeks belong to the Patriots, 49ers, Texans, Titans, and Saints. Now, out of this group, I think we can all agree that overly betting on Mac Jones and the Patriots' 31st ranked scoring offense isn't going to be all that great for the fantasy business. That said, every one of these other 4 quarterbacks are conveniently available in a good portion of leagues. Now, out of these 4, we should absolutely prioritize Brock Purdy and C.J. Stroud if possible. That said, Purdy is owned in 86% of Yahoo leagues at the moment, while Stroud rests at 78%, so a decent chance that you do not have the opportunity to add them anyway. This takes us to Will Levis and Derek Carr, who are both available in far more leagues than not at this point. Now, if you're in need of a quarterback specifically for this week or next, I do think Carr deserves the benefit of the doubt here. The ex-Raiders quarterback has racked up not 1, not 2, but 3 consecutive performances with at least 300 passing yards inside of a Saints offense that honestly has some firepower to go around pretty much at every position. Now, with Carr, we know there's not going to be a huge upside here. We've all seen him play long enough, and the rushing floor isn't anything to write home about. That said, upcoming matchups against the Bears and Vikings are certainly smashable before a week 11 bye, and then 2 more reasonable enough spots against the Falcons and Lions. Now, on the other hand, if you're looking for a quarterback who could potentially offer some newfound QB1 heights down the stretch, I do then think Will Levis is the guy to stash. First performance of his career was absolutely spectacular, 4 touchdowns through the air, many of them of the downfield variety. Now guys, small sample size be damned, Levis is quite literally the #1 player in NFL history in terms of fantasy points per game. Minimum 1 game played. But all that aside, guys, we are looking at a young quarterback with the sort of arm strength to force defenses to account for every square inch of the field, and we haven't even seen some of that pretty awesome rushing upside he demonstrated at Kentucky before playing through his final year mostly injured. So with Levis, again, someone that I'm not actively looking to start against TJ Watt and company on Thursday night, but if we get 1 or 2 more performances that even somewhat look like what we saw in week 8, it's going to be tough to keep him out of the top 12 in the ranks sooner rather than later. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. And from best to also really good, but just from 1 to 5, we're talking about the Patriots, the Browns, the Rams, the Titans, and the Buccaneers having the top 5 easiest schedules over the course of the next 5 weeks of action. Now, the Patriots, Browns, and Buccaneers have pretty straightforward backfields. It's Ramondre Stevenson, Jerome Ford when he's healthy, and Rachaad White leading the way there. Even in Los Angeles, yes, Darrell Henderson has emerged as the 1A to Royce Freeman's 1B for now, but we should actually see Kyren Williams back sooner rather than later, meaning that that is also a backfield that we don't have to pay too much mind to. Overall, guys, I really want to pay the most attention to the Tennessee Titans because there's not 1 but 2 running backs playing under head coach Mike Vrabel that I do think could offer some potentially huge fantasy upside down the stretch. Of course, we need to start with the big dog himself, Derrick Henry, to start. Now, Henry hasn't exactly had the sort of throwback 2019 or 2020 year that fantasy managers are probably hoping for. Just the RB13.5 PPR scoring. We haven't quite seen Henry build on that career best receiving production from last year due to the presence of 3rd round rookie Tyjae Spears. More on him in just a second. But with Henry, guys, I will say that as much as we might say he's lost a step or he's not quite the same tackle breaker in the year 2023, we really haven't seen Henry have the opportunity to really demonstrate what he can do when the weather gets cold. Over the course of Henry's career, the yards per carry numbers, guys, simply don't lie. While the going has been a bit tough in September and October, from November to December and even into January, we have seen Henry go Super Saiyan and evolve into the very best version of himself. Yeah, guess what? I really wouldn't want to be tackling that man when the temperature drops below 32 degrees either. So yes, Henry, someone that maybe you were hoping would have gotten traded to more of a contender just a few short days ago. That said, everyone, still very much the sort of player that's going to rack up 20 plus touches more weeks than not. And don't be surprised if he starts making those into a lot more production here with the weather getting colder. Now, back to that, nuisance of a rookie pass-catching running back we just mentioned, Tyjae Spears, who, let's face it, guys, really has been making the most out of his opportunities all season long. Top 3 in yards per carry, yards after contact per carry, and missed tackles forced per carry. We truly see him standing up there with Devin Achane and Jaleel McLaughlin as the single most efficient running backs in the entire NFL. Now, small sample size be damned, Spears is the only running back on the Titans not named Derrick Henry who has received even a single touch this season, meaning he certainly looks like the next man up should Henry be forced to miss time for any reason at all. Now, we could see someone like Julius Chestnut or one of these free agent running backs come in and take some of that early down work were Henry to miss time due to an injury or whatever. That said, Spears, with as well as he's playing in an offense finally showing some semblance of scoring upside, would be really tough to keep out of fantasy lineups of all shapes and sizes were Henry to miss time, because I do think we would be looking at 15 plus combined carries and targets on a weekly basis. So again, if you have that second tight end or the third quarterback, or God forbid a second DST or kicker on those rosters, can't recommend enough getting Tyjae Spears on those benches now before he's on the cover of a waiver wire article and you no longer have the chance. Up next, I want to look at 4 specific wide receivers who are really going to be benefiting here from an easy stretch over the course of the next 5 weeks. Now, from a team perspective, we're looking at the 49ers, the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Colts, and the Titans as the top 5 wide receiver rooms, again, expecting to face an easy upcoming schedule. But inside of those groups, there are 4 particular options who are going to be mostly available in your leagues and accordingly could really help supply some much needed flex fill-ins during these bye weeks. In terms of who is rostered in the most leagues to who is rostered in the least leagues, I want to talk about Colts wide receiver Josh Downs, who has really emerged as a number 2 target in Indy behind only Michael Pittman with Gardner Minshew under center. And wild enough, guys, has even outscored Ravens rookie wide receiver Zay Flowers in terms of PPR points per game, very much looking like a rock-solid wide receiver 3 down the stretch. There's also Cowboys clear-cut number 2 wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who has scored in 2 straight games inside of a passing attack that suddenly looks very lethal following that abysmal performance against the 49ers on Sunday Night Football just a few weeks ago. If we see Dak keeping on like this, it's going to be a matter of when, not if, Cooks puts together a true huge boom performance. Also keep an eye on Titans number 2 wide receiver Treylon Burks, who just returned from his knee injury and accordingly didn't have a true full-time role in week 8, but as we did see on 2 such occasions, he is one of these downfield threats that this new downfield-oriented Will Levis-led attack wants to get involved in the offense. So yes, that goose egg sucked. Just realized, guys, very close to hauling in not 1 but 2 downfield bombs. Treylon Burks, no, is he ever going to be someone that we're just feeling great about putting in the lineup? Probably not, but yes, I do think he's someone who could provide a boom as a flex option, again, when the bye weeks are hurting. Finally, owned in just 6% of Yahoo leagues right now, we have potentially a new Patriots wide receiver 1, Demario Douglas. Ran the most routes per dropback on the entire team last week and suddenly might just be that number 1 pass game option with Kendrick Bourne, unfortunately, set to miss the rest of the season with a torn ACL. So I get it. It's Mac Jones. It's the Patriots' 31st ranked scoring offense. Not exactly the sort of offensive environment we should be overly hyped to get into, but volume can be a hell of a drug in fantasy football land, and don't be surprised if Douglas all of a sudden starts seeing a lot of it. Moving right along to the tight end position, as you can see with our lovely handy dandy graphics, the top 5 tight end schedules moving forward are the Bills, the Saints, the Texans, the Vikings, and even the Packers. So yes, this does mean that Dalton Kincaid's tight end 1 season is going to be prolonged for at least a few more weeks as long as Dawson Knox remains out of the picture. But the really interesting one here, guys, is going to be Saints tight end / vulture / whatever you want to call him, Taysom Hill, who quietly has scored the 2nd most PPR points at the position behind only Travis Kelce over the course of these past 3 weeks of action. Now, those first 2 games were uncoincidentally, a spot where we did not have Juwan Johnson in there. That said, Johnson did return last week, and while Taysom only ran a route on about 40 or so % of the team's dropbacks, he still maintained enough involvement as a receiver to just envision him as a more consistent tight end 1 on top of that ever lethal goal line vulture role. So no, I do think that Taysom Taysom Hill is someone that we shouldn't exactly rank as a top 5 player at the position every single week moving forward. But man, beggars cannot be choosers down there in the low end tight end 1 territory. And with a player now suddenly capable of seeing a combined 10 carries and targets per week, now that version of Taysom Hill is someone that I am looking to get on those fantasy rosters. All right, guys, and we're going to close things out with the easiest DST schedules for the next 5 weeks of action. Now, the Colts do technically have the easiest schedule, but when you're the 32nd ranked scoring defense, I don't think we should be putting too much weight behind the matchup portion of the equation anyway. That said, guys, when we look at teams number 2 and number 3, the Saints and the Dolphins, these are the squads I think we should be really trying to get behind over these next 5 weeks. In the Saints' case, they've already been crushing it thanks to a schedule that has afforded them one backup or young QB after another, and that's not going to be changing anytime soon in regards to their next 3 matchups against the Bears, Vikings, a bye week, and then the Falcons. Now, in week 13, you do have to face Jared Goff and the Lions. That is not ideal, but guys, if you can stomach this one game that is going to be in the Superdome, to be fair, we're looking at spots against the Falcons, the Panthers, the Giants, and the Rams through week 17. Can't recommend enough holding on to the Saints through that week 11 bye. Also got to keep in mind the Dolphins are getting healthier at the right time thanks to Jalen Ramsey, who, let's face it, has been one of the league's better cornerbacks more seasons than not ever since entering the league back in 2016. In regards to Ramsey and this Dolphins defense, hasn't been, a world-beating unit this year, but when you do look at the upcoming matchups against, the Chiefs and then a bye week, no, those aren't good. But then the Raiders, the Jets, and the Commanders coming out of that week 10 bye, that's where we get excited. So there's a decent chance the Dolphins are going to be on your waiver wire, whether it's against the Chiefs this week or the bye week following that. Don't be afraid to scoop them up again before that really fantasy-friendly stretch from weeks 11 to 13. All right, guys, that's all I got on the easiest upcoming schedules. But if you want more info on the toughest schedules and even just wondering about a specific team, head on over to fantasylife.com. I got a full article with the information for all 32 teams over the course of the next 5 weeks. Appreciate you guys tuning in with me. Let me know in the comments, what schedules you might be particularly afraid of. And otherwise, just go out there and win those fantasy matchups. As always, it's a great day to be great. Appreciate you stopping by. Until next time, take care.